It was my junior year in college, and Jordan and I had mutual friends. Started getting to know each other very slowly but surely. When I was starting to feel real, like, ooh, I might have a crush on this guy, I asked some of his guy friends who are also my guy friends. And you can tell a lot about a man's integrity by what his friends say, what other men say. And they were all just like, this man loves the Lord. He very kind, very generous, very patient. One thing about Jordan is you never heard him complain. So we both kind of knew that after our junior year, he was going to go to Tanzania to build a birthing clinic, and I was going to go to New York for women's ministry internship. We both knew in the summer we were going to do different things. We were like talking intentionally, but not like too intentionally. Everything took kind of a crazy turn that summer. Jordan, while he was in Tanzania, he was having nosebleeds that were so severe his eyes would bleed. And so when he came back from the trip, he went and saw several specialists to see what's going on, and that's when they found the tumor. It was lodged behind his eyes, and that's when they found out he had stage 4 cancer. Jordan had to sell everything in Tulsa to go to North Carolina to get aggressive treatment. I was like, do I keep intentionally talking to this person when he's battling for his life, or do I give him space? Where I knew I was at a crossroads, and my mentor said, whatever you decide to do, Cady, you need to walk in the love of God. Do not walk in fear. That was such a good word of wisdom for me, because then every interaction that I had with Jordan, I could just turn to God and say, okay, how can I best love him as God would love him? He went through radiation, chemotherapy, and the radiation would burn his vocal cords to where we could only talk on the phone once a week, but we would send care packages back and forth. And so it had been a whole year, and we had gone through all of that together. And I still remember December 22nd, he went to the doctor and he was declared cancer-free. And I knew, I was like, he's going to come back in January and we're probably going to start really dating. And so he came back and he asked me to be his girlfriend. And so it had been a whole year, and we had gone through all of that together. And I remember it went from January to May, you watched winter melt away and spring blossom and summer come. And I felt like that was the season of my life. Like, what was happening in front of me was what was happening in real time. Jordan was just getting stronger. He was recovering so well. And by the time we got to the end of the school year, we were like, hey, we pretty much know we're going to get married. So why don't you come back to North Carolina with me? I have routine checkups, but that way you can meet my parents. I had no idea he had picked up my engagement ring. And before we had left for the trip, he had asked for my dad's blessing. I decided to go to the routine checkups with him, and we're like passing each appointment with flying colors. Like, we were giggling. And we get to the last appointment, and the doctor flung open the door and walks across the room and collapses in the chair. He looks at Jordan and he says, it's back, it's bad, and it's all over your body. I don't know how to explain that moment at all, except it was the Holy Spirit, because I somehow stood up and walked across the medical room, went to Jordan and said, hey, I'm going to be your wife this time around. And 3.5 weeks later, we got married. Everybody came together, and it just felt like it was sorrowful, but it was deeply hopeful. And I think we all had full confidence and faith that Jordan was going to be healed. And I think that was something that was really unifying for us and really exciting during that time. We just got married, so we were like 2 or 3 weeks in. We immediately start the most aggressive treatment we can find. And we're newlyweds, but also we're walking through end of life conversations and situations. The contrast between both of these worlds was just crazy. We traveled all over the United States, getting every type of treatment we could for him, and all of them failed. Second Corinthians 4 talks about when we walk through momentary and light affliction, though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day, and as we look to the things that aren't transient. And so I felt like God gave me a front row seat to that entire passage, to where all I could see was his inner self getting renewed day by day, that I didn't even see his outer self wasting away. March 20th at 9 a.m., the palliative care nurse came in and she said, "Hey, this is going to be the last day Jordan is here on earth, and so don't leave his side." I thought this was all going to turn out wonderful and beautiful. And when Jordan breathed his last breath, I felt the hand of Jesus on my back. And I remember whispering out loud, "I'm going to be okay." Just kind of like, okay, well, you're sovereign, so what are you going to do with this broken mess? And I felt like in every single second, he was just ministering to me, holding me. I knew he was taking care of me. He was like, "You're my widow." Like, "You're on me. I'm taking care of you. Like, I have your husband up in glory, and you're my bride here on earth, and I'm going to sustain you and protect you and take care of you." Many people who have walked through suffering know that the first birthday without the loved one is really hard. One of my friends, Karis, knew that Jordan's birthday was coming up. Her being so thoughtful and gracious said, "I'm going to take you on a girls' trip to Charleston, and we're going to stay at our friend John's house." He had been an usher in me and Jordan's wedding.
So I got a call from a friend of mine, his wife, that they were looking for a place to take Cady for Jordan's birthday. They were very aware of significant dates and the impact that can have. And so he called me, he's like, "Hey man, we've been to your family's house in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Would there be a way that Karis could take Cady to come stay at that house?" And for context, like, Cady and I didn't really know each other that well, but felt like, man, this is a really chance to honor and serve somebody who has carried this caretaker role so well for my friend, has honored God so much in the process, and it's just someone I deeply respect. And my goal was really like, hey, we're here to serve and stay out of the way. One of the first things that they did was they went on a dolphin tour.
My friend had planned for us to go see dolphins. I've never seen dolphins live before. And apparently that's a thing you can do in Charleston, is look at dolphins. And so she plans a dolphin boat tour for us, and we don't see any dolphins.
And my dad went full South Carolina and was like, "Well, I can tell you where to find some dolphins, come on." And so we're riding in a boat in my dad's Carolina skiff and lawn chairs, and he knew exactly where to go. We're seeing dolphins all over the place. There was a distinct moment where I'm talking to her, and I don't know how to describe it other than it was like a veil was lifted in how I saw her.
And there was this moment that we just connected. And it to this day, my friend Karis will say, I know that moment in the boat where I looked over, she says, I looked over at John and he was like, "Who's this woman?"
And I really felt like the Lord was saying, hey, see her differently. And, people talk about love at first sight. I had seen her, but it was like, when I saw her in that moment, it was like, I love this woman. And it was a very shocking kind of switch in my heart. And I remember just feeling like, I don't really know what to do with that. Like, is this okay? I don't know what else to do with this other than to pray.
We end up just having this beautiful weekend. I called my mom from Charleston, and she will say, this is the first time I heard Cady laugh again. I told Mom on the phone, I said, I forgot that I'm really silly. We began to text back and forth, and it was like, it was so sweet because it was kind of like letters. Like, we would text one text every couple of days.
And we were basically almost doing like a pen pals thing where we'd send these long messages to each other. And then remember we had a time where we did some phone calls. And then there was one night where we talked on the phone, and we talked on the phone until 3 a.m. And I remember I had been thinking, I'm going to wait as long as I can to tell her how I feel, because I think that's really confusing and challenging.
And I, at that point, feeling again these two worlds clashing of hope again, but I'm a widow. Feeling also this tension of, is it okay to have fun again? Do I still need to be grieving? Or is it okay for me to be happy and have fun again?
My seminary assigned you a mentor. And so I go to breakfast with this mentor, and he's like, all right, man, well, you're, in your late 20s, you're single, you got any girls in your life? And I got feelings for my friend's widow, and I'd love some wisdom on how to navigate this. We were both going to be at a wedding in October that year.
But it was like I couldn't tell myself I was excited because I was starting to have feelings for John. I couldn't let myself go there yet. But it was like really this amazing feeling of just feeling very excited to see John.
Yeah, obviously we have a great friendship, but I have to bring clarity to this. I just remember feeling the conviction to be as clear on my end as where I was coming from, as unassuming as I could be on her end. Probably haven't ever been that nervous in my life, just because I had no idea how is this going to land.
But he was like, Cady, as a man, I want to tell you that I do have feelings for you, but I also know where you're at. You've been very clear with me about that and how you're still in the grieving process. And so I just want to ask permission to wait for you and walk through this journey with you in whatever capacity you want me, if that's a friend or if that's more than that. But if you are okay with that, I want to ask your permission to wait for you until you are ready.
And as she processed, she asked, well, what if I'm not ready in a year? What if I'm not ready? And I just remember thinking, I've never understood Jacob saying he would wait 7 years and then waiting another 7 for Rachel until this point.
I'll never forget this. I've said this 1,000 times because it meant so much to me. But he said, I want to ask your permission to wait for you, whether it's 7 years or 17 years. And even at the end, you feel like the Lord is leading you down a different path. That is okay. Because I just want what God wants for you. I want God's best for you. That will give you joy. That moment, I knew that this man was God's redeeming piece of my story, and that this man was going to be in my life forever.
I talked to her dad and asked him for permission to date her. And I also felt the conviction to talk to Jordan's dad. They were such a tight family in that process, but I wanted to respect. I know this is big. This implications of this are big for not just Cady's family, but for his family as well. We dated one another and got married in August of 2016, and God brought us on this new journey together. I've always said, I'd give anything so that Jordan didn't have to walk through what he walked through and that Cady didn't have to walk through what she walked through. But now that they have, I know that the person that God called me to pursue is the person that was on the other side of that. We just celebrated Easter, and our understanding the resurrection is that Jordan is with Jesus, and I'm going to get to see Jordan, and he's going to have a resurrected body with lungs that don't fail, and we're going to get to enjoy the King together. And that has given me so much hope in what was a hard situation. I heard a pastor say, God's answer to healing is always yes or wait.
When we think everything's hopeless, or when we think it's the end of the story, Jesus is just brewing up something new and special and beautiful. And that's what he was doing in my life. I couldn't have written a more beautiful love story. I look back and I wouldn't have chosen this story, but I wouldn't have changed it for anything, because it's so beautiful and it's so redemptive of what he had for me.